Hi everyone, and welcome to our Life After Graduation Day 2 session. Today we are joined by a fantastic panel and we're going to share with you some great insights into the UK recruitment processes and graduate recruitment processes. Today we are joined by Engin Zekia, Russell Brown, Sophie Wallace, Wenwen Zhu, Iris C and Union Liu. And we are going to share with you our insights from across various different industries on UK recruitment and graduation processes, but also employment contract as well. So I'd like to start the session today and welcome Engin Zekia to deliver our first talk of today. Thank you, Engin.
Many thanks. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this careers presentation event, which I honestly hope you will find useful. I'll spend a few minutes talking to you about Gerald Edelman, give you a little bit of an insight about the firm. I'll spend most of the time, rest of the time talking about job applications and how to try and maximize the effect and how to make it as good as it can be, and briefly talk about our recruitment and the vacancies that we have available. So Gerald Edelman, we're what's known as a mid-tier firm. So as you may be aware, accountancy firms range from the very smallest, very small offices to international firms, and we're kind of partway through. We're about 140 staff. We've got an office in the city. Primarily, the main issue with Gerald Edelman is we have sector specialisms. So I look after the audit group, which is one of the largest groups in the firm. And we effectively just do audits, okay? Whereas the smaller firms, they tend to do a little bit of everything. And the larger firms, or the very largest firms, they specialize in what's called listed companies, which are enormous entities. You know, they're blue chip household names, and those durations, the audit durations last many, many months. So we feel we have a good mix where you get a great deal of variety, you'll get responsibility quite early on, and we feel that it gives a good mix. We've got a variety of sectors. We tend to have a bit of a specialism in property, but there's a wide variety, so you won't be doing just one type of client. There'll be a good mix of clients. And as I said, we are specialists within our field. So as I say, I'm in audit, we've got tax departments, wealth departments, accounting, all sorts. So effectively, if you were to join us in the audit department, you will primarily spend your time doing audits with the chance to be seconded throughout your 3 years. Okay, thanks, Lauren. Can you move on to the next slide? Now, I guess this is an important factor for most people, because most employers will appreciate that you won't have probably any work experience of any sort, and it's very difficult for them to kind of differentiate between employees or between candidates rather. So what you need to do is use it as a marketing document and show yourself in the best light, okay? There's some details there as to what we look for, and I guess it's quite common amongst most firms. So most firms look for a minimum of a 2-1 rather, reasonably good English and maths grades. We in particular do not have a preferred degree, okay? So we don't look just for accountancy or finance related. We're quite happy with degrees from any sector. It could be in the arts, humanities, what have you. It really doesn't matter. All we're concerned about is that we have someone who is academically able, very interested in their chosen career, and are able to apply themselves. And, you know, if you've got an intelligent student, doesn't matter what their background is, it tends to be, you know, they tend to be quite successful. Now, what I would say, and this is the one thing that I would say is most important to me, and I would say is important to most others, you need to demonstrate, you need to make it clear why accountancy is for you, what's drawn you to it, why you're interested in it, okay? I tend to get responses such as, my dad's an accountant, or I've heard it's good, or I hear it pays well, which is all valid stuff, but it doesn't kind of inspire a potential employer that it's really what you want to do. So what I suggest you do is, if you can do as much research as possible, find out about the career, find out about what the training's like, speak to people who've either done it or are in the early stages of doing it, because you'll have a great insight into what it's like to train to be an accountant. There's many, many forums online. You can find out from current and past students. That's the best way of finding out. Because if you go into an interview and they start probing as to what you found out, what you know, what you don't know, what you don't want is for it to start unraveling, okay? They don't expect you to know everything. And I, for one, and I'm sure many other recruiters, are more than happy to fill in those gaps. But what we don't want to be is the source of all knowledge. We're not here to tell you all about it. We expect you to know about it. As you probably know, accountancy is a demanding career. It's demanding as a student. There's a lot to learn, but it's very fruitful. It's a fantastic career. You know, I've said that having been in this for decades. And, you know, it opens up great opportunities. I mean, we would love for all our trainees to stay with us and to develop their career, but not everyone does that. It opens many doors. So it is a great qualification to have. Now, in terms of our recruitment process, we use an organization called CityGrad, okay? So all applications will initially go to them. They will receive the applications, the CVs, they will look through, and they will come up with a shortlist of maybe 20 candidates, okay? And those candidates will be called for an assessment day, okay? And what it involves is a combination of us telling the candidates more about the firm. So I will do a talk like this, but in more detail. There'll be a chance to meet a number of our audit partners, a number of our managers and trainees. And the day will involve group exercises. Okay, so it won't be a one-on-one type situation. You'll be working in groups, trying to solve problems, see how you interact with people, working in teams. Being able to work with others is a very important skill. So, you know, it's nice to see how you get on. We appreciate people are nervous, and we take all that into account, so you shouldn't feel too concerned. And there is an interview there as well. Okay, so it's quite a full-on day. We get positive feedback. You know, we're not trying to trip anyone up. We're just trying to understand what someone is like. Will they fit in? Do they know what they're actually applying for? Because it is a big investment, not just for us, but for you as well. 3 years is quite a long time. We don't want someone to start the career and then partway through decide it's not for them, okay? Because once someone starts, we can't replace that person. We can't go back and find someone who's got 2 years worth of experience. We could potentially with a lot of effort, but we don't want to. So we'd rather take on someone who is willing to go the full way, hopefully academically able enough to get through their exams without too much trouble. Ideally get through them first time, but it's, people do stumble sometimes along the way, and eventually hopefully to form a good career with Gerald Edelman. So as I said, CityGrad do the recruitment or the initial stages. They take part in this assessment day. There's a number of managers and partners that get involved in it. And, I think it will be a fun and, a good experience for you as well. Lauren, next slide, please. So the standard intakes for accountancy tends to be in September, which is by far the main one, and in January. So recently we have moved to a joint September and January intake, and we're going to take on probably about 8 people, probably split 4 and 4, but depending on preferences and what have you, it could be skewed one way or the other, but we want a bit of a mix. We don't want 7 and 1, because what will happen is that poor one person won't be going to courses with anyone else. So we want there to be a little bit of camaraderie, along the way. So that's the audit department. We have other departments that take on graduates as well. So I've spoken to my colleagues in the tax team. They are a bit more flexible. They may take on one or two, possibly in September, but they are willing to take on someone earlier if need be. So if you're desperate to, once you graduate, start a career straight away, potentially, they may have a role. And our corporate finance team, we've got a growing corporate finance team, and they will take on one or two, again, possibly around September. Again, they're a bit flexible. It kind of depends on what their workload is like, and they may welcome someone coming in earlier. Now, because I guess most of you will be joining as trainees, there is no one, I guess, on this call who has got any sort of substantial accounting, tax, or corporate finance experience. Then we may well have vacancies for partially qualified staff, but I don't think it will be appropriate for the people on this call. But you're welcome to look at our website to see what our current vacancies are. So in a nutshell, that's the topics that I wanted to raise, but I'll be on call to answer any queries later on.
Thank you, Engin, and that's fantastic. And I think a lot of what you've said in terms of the recruitment processes and how to create a standout application is relevant regardless of the sector or the company that you're going for. I think a lot of your points are really valid. And for those students who are considering other disciplines, I think it's a really great way of learning a bit more about how you can make yourself stand out in quite a competitive market. And I know accountancy and finance in particular is very, very competitive for a lot of our graduates, and I really appreciate those insights. I'm going to move on to our next speaker now. Our next speaker is Russell Brown, and Russell's going to share with you what to watch out for in your new employment contract. And I think this is really important because if you're coming to work in the UK, or you've not worked in the UK before and you're a UK resident, employment contracts can be one of those areas where it's a bit difficult to understand and not sure what to do. So hopefully Russell's going to share with us some great insights today. Russell.
Thank you, Noeline. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me on the call this morning. So just very, very briefly, a bit of information about myself and the firm I'm a partner in. So I'm a partner in the employment team at a firm called Glaziers ETL. We're based in Manchester, have offices in London. We're a Legal 500 recognised firm, and that's Legal 500 recognised across all areas of work in the practice. So the main areas we cover are corporate commercial, property, litigation, employment, and private clients. We tend to provide advice to clients predominantly in the northwest of England, but also throughout the UK. We tend to advise clients from PLCs down to SMEs and owner-managed businesses, and that's across a wide range of sectors: media, telecoms, transport, manufacturing, health, IT, construction, and many others. That's a bit about the firm. As Nolan explained, I've been asked to just speak to you for several minutes from an employment lawyer's perspective about what, as a graduate, you ought to be looking out for in your employment contracts when you hopefully find your first job as a professional in your chosen career. So the first thing I would say is it's a very exciting time when you finish your studies and you get your first role. And the main thing that you need to be focusing on really is trying to learn new skills, absorb information from your new colleagues who've got more experience that they can share with you. Try to absorb as much as you can, and of course try to apply the information that you've learned in the course of your education. Worrying over your employment contract is not something I would really recommend, because if I'm being entirely honest with you, at the very early stages of anyone's career, the strength of bargaining power typically lies with the employer. So you don't really get much say in what should or should not be in your employment contract. Now, that does tend to change as you progress through your career. You may develop a strong bank of clients, or you might have a particular strength in a particular niche where you're in more demand. And then, of course, you're in a better position to tell any prospective employers what terms you expect to have in your employment contract if they want to employ you. But from a graduate perspective, that doesn't typically tend to apply. Now, giving some thought as to what I was going to talk to you about today, there are obviously lots and lots of clauses in employment contracts. Employment contracts can run for up to 30 or 40 pages in some cases. I'm not going to focus necessarily on the standard clauses that you might ordinarily think, for instance, notice, holidays, that sort of thing. It's those provisions that are more specific to you as a graduate, as a new starter into the world of employment and a professional services practice. So the first thing is read your offer letter very, very carefully. So most offers are subject to conditions. What that means is that you can't formally accept the offer and create a binding contract until you have met the certain conditions. And the typical conditions that you tend to get asked to comply with are proof of your academic qualifications and your grades, excuse me, successfully passing a DBS check, and of course references. So when you receive that offer letter, if you're interested in accepting the role, my advice would be move very quickly. Next point to be aware of is probationary periods. So most contracts are subject to a probationary period of somewhere between 3 to 6 months. And the purpose of that provision is basically to allow your new employer to weigh you up and decide whether you are as good as they initially thought you were. Typically within probationary periods, you tend to be on a shorter period of notice. So for instance, you might be on a month's notice during your probationary period, and then on successful completion of that probation period, the notice will increase to typically 3 months for a professional. It might also provide for other points, such as you might be lucky enough to get a salary increase if you've successfully passed your probation period. You might be eligible to receive more benefits as well that you're not initially eligible to in the course of the probation period. Next point I was going to cover was try to understand the difference between an employment contract and the handbook. So typically the terms in the contract, as the name suggests, are contractual obligations on both parties. The employee handbook is usually just a set of rules. It's a set of informal house rules that your employer is free to vary at their will. So if you are eligible to certain benefits that are only referred to in the employment contract, so in the handbook, they're not usually contractual unless it expressly says so. And another point on the handbook, the employee handbook is usually a very good indicator of, how can I put it, of the quality of your employer. So if you get a flimsy 3-page handbook with not many policies in, then it's usually a sign of an employer who doesn't attach an awful lot of weight to the HR side of things with their staff. Whereas if you have a more comprehensive, well-drafted handbook, it tends to show that there is a focus on that side of things. Next thing to consider is what your contract says in terms of training. So under a piece of legislation called the Good Work Plan, employers are now obliged to set out details of training in your employment contract. Now that will either say you don't receive any training, or it will say that you do receive certain training that is mandatory, or you will receive other training which your employer is going to pay for, or other training which you may have to pay for. So it's worthwhile having a look at that as well to see what provisions for training are there, because of course your education side of your career, as I'm sure you know, doesn't end the moment you graduate. It's an ongoing thing. Excuse me. You might also want to have a look to see if there's any provision in the contract to see who pays for membership of your professional body. So for instance, from my profession as a solicitor, we're governed by the SRA, the Solicitors Regulation Authority. If you are moving into the accountancy profession, then it's the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales. There are membership fees that have to be paid annually. Worthwhile looking to check that your employer will pay those fees for you. A lot of contracts will also have provisions in to allow for, excuse me, the recoupment of training fees if you leave your employer's employment. So your employer might pay for you to go on an additional postgraduate course when you're training, so once you start your employment, or they might say, we will pay for your training, but if you leave, we expect to recoup the costs of that training if you've left within a certain number of months of having carried out the training. So again, it's worthwhile having a look at that. So if you do decide to move on in the future, you know whether you're going to have to repay any training course fees, which can be potentially quite expensive in some cases. This is probably the first time when you start a new role where someone's going to give you a nice new shiny laptop, an iPhone. It won't be yours, it will be your employer's. You'll be subject to quite specific rules about what you can and you can't do with them. One being whether or not you can use them for personal use. As an employment lawyer, I can say I've come across countless instances of employees falling foul of these rules and being subject to disciplinary proceedings. So not wishing to sound too negative, but it's worthwhile looking in the handbook or speaking to your new employer and finding out whether you can actually use them for personal use. It's also worthwhile finding out if you've got a social media policy and a bring your own device, excuse me, bring your own device to work policy, which is a policy which governs the use of your own devices if, for instance, you're going to be receiving employer-related email communications from your own personal handset. There are very specific rules, and again, it's a very common scenario that us employment lawyers come across where employees post inappropriate comments on social media that end up landing them in hot water with their employers. So it's worthwhile just familiarising yourself with your social media policy. Another clause to consider is the place of work clause in your contract. So if you're going to work for an employer that has one place, so more than one place of work, you want to try and establish where your base will be, and importantly, whether you're going to be expected to work at other locations. And if you are, then you might want to find out what happens in terms of the cost of traveling to those locations. So if you work for an employer that has locations, let's say in North and South London, and you're located in South London, and every now and again you're going to have to travel north, who's going to cover the costs of the additional transport that you're going to incur to work at that alternative location. You may be lucky enough to receive a bonus. The rules around bonuses can be very messy, very complicated, but typically you tend to have a contractual bonus or a non-contractual discretionary bonus. The discretion can be exercised in all sorts of weird and wonderful ways. If there are rules and there are set criteria, then ask for a copy of them so that you can see what they are. And in particular, what I would suggest, one area that a lot of people fall foul of is they come to leave their employer at the wrong time, and they find out that because they're under notice, they don't then receive any bonus payment. So it's definitely worthwhile having a look at that, as I say, if you are going to be fortunate enough to receive a bonus at some point during the course of your employment. In terms of some of the standard clauses, notice, well, I would say typically from what I've seen over the last 20 years, standard notice provisions are, as I mentioned earlier, a month during probation, and then really you're looking for 3 months each way from you and your employer if you want to terminate thereafter. You want to be looking out for flexible working terms post-pandemic. That is now the norm, as you'll have no doubt heard a lot in the media. Most employers where it's possible to work from home are allowing their workforce to do it. Sick pay, I wouldn't be expecting it to be limited to statutory sick pay. you would want at the very least a contract to say that it is discretionary, and ideally you would want something more specific. For example, 6 weeks full pay, 6 weeks half pay, or something along those lines, or ideally better. Annual leave, the statutory minimum is 5.6 weeks, which if you work a 5-day week, that's 28 days a year, and that includes public and bank holidays. So that's the absolute minimum. I would say from experience, certainly with graduates in professional services practices, you're looking at 5 weeks plus the 8 statutory and public bank holidays. You might even find that some employers give you the ability to buy more additional annual leave. And finally, restrictive covenants, which is something everybody gets hung up about, but from a graduate perspective, I wouldn't be especially concerned about that. It's something, like I say, that you won't have much control over, and it's unlikely that you're going to develop the type of relationship and influence with clients that is going to pose any major concern to employers until you've been employed with them for some time. And hopefully by that point, you'll have progressed with your career, and you might be on a different contract where you will have the ability to have a more of a two-way conversation about those covenants. So basically, that's all I think I've got to say. I've probably just about run out of time, but hopefully that's a bit of a useful, albeit whistle-stop tour of the issues that you need to bear in mind.
Thanks, Russell. And I learned a few things on that as well. And I think for many of our graduates, it's good to know about these things, because we can get very excited in the whole job application process. And when that job offer comes in, sometimes we don't really take the time to read through those documents. It's so exciting, we're just going to sign away and send back as quickly as we can. So taking that time to really read through and note those different areas, I think it's important, and I appreciate you covering that today. Thank you. So we're just going to go to the remainder of our panelists today before we open up for our Q&A. If you do have questions, if you can post them in the question and answer section, and I will run through them. I would first like to go to Sophie. Sophie, can you give a brief introduction about yourself and where you're based today?
Hi everyone, so my name's Sophie Wallace. I'm part of the early careers team at Bloomberg, and today I'm in the office in Bank, not actually far from the Gerald Edelman offices. So yeah, nice to see you all today virtually. I have been in the kind of student recruitment space for quite a few years now, but before that I actually started off in audit. So I've had experience on that side as well, so any questions on either area I'm happy to answer. Just to tell you a little bit about Bloomberg in terms of what we do for those who aren't aware. So Bloomberg was set up in 1981 by Mike Bloomberg, who you have probably heard of, and he saw a gap in the market, in the financials market space. So if you were a trader or the client of a trader, for example, back then, you were relying on information that someone on the phone was giving to you, or information that you were reading in the newspaper, and there was no kind of immediate access or transparency of that information. So he saw that gap in the market, and he set up Bloomberg with the aim of allowing market players to have access to the same data at the same time, to allow them to make the most informed investment decisions. So that was the overall aim of Bloomberg, and still remains our aim today. As a business, we interact with our clients through our main product, which is the Bloomberg Terminal, which you may have seen, or you may have even used. Some universities have access to terminals, so you may have had the opportunity to use it yourself. And around 75% of our revenue comes from the terminal itself. In terms of business areas and what we recruit into as an early careers team, the easiest way to describe the different teams is through how they interact with the terminal itself. So we have our engineering team, and they are responsible for building the skeleton of the terminal and maintaining that functionality to allow the other teams to kind of do their roles. We have our data team, who are then responsible for filling that skeleton of the terminal with all of the data that we have on there. So they're responsible for sourcing, managing, and feeding the data onto the terminal. We then have our analytics and sales teams, and their main role is to help our customers navigate the terminal. So that those teams have really strong knowledge of how the terminal works, all of the functionalities that we have within it. And the sales team, as I'm sure you would guess, are responsible for going out and selling the use of our products and services to potential customers. So customers will pay a subscription fee to have access to use of the terminal and all of the data that's within it. Our next team is our customer support team. So this team is the first line of defense for Bloomberg. So the first point of contact if someone calls us up, whether they're having technical issues with accessing the terminal and logging in, a question on the data itself that they are using, functionality of the terminal. They know our products and our organization inside out to help provide as much support to our customers that are calling up as possible. So they resolve around 70% of all queries that come in. They resolve those queries there and then directly. If they don't know the responses, they don't know how to resolve the issues, they then know which team is appropriate to pass that query on to then resolve that query. So if it's something around a specific data point within a specific data set, they know to pass it on to the data team who are responsible for sourcing that data and uploading it onto the terminal. And then finally, our news and research team. So you may have heard of the Bloomberg News channel. So we have our teams working there to support that, whether it's through sourcing content, the production side of things. So a wide variety. And I've probably gone over my allowed time there, but just to give you an overview of the different sections to give you some context.
No, it's fantastic to get that insight into the different areas, because I sometimes think with many of our students, when they're looking at careers and they see an accounting and finance company, they don't think of the various nuances within that business itself that require a variety of skills. So it's great to get those insights. Thanks for sharing that, Sophie. Next, I'd like to welcome Wenwen Zhu. And if Wenwen, can you just take the opportunity just to introduce yourself and a little bit about your organization?
Yeah, thank you so much. And this is Wenwen from Bank of China. I joined the Bank of China UK Limited in 2010. And some of you may have heard of Bank of China, but I just clarify here that we're not the central bank in China, not like Bank of England. The BOC is a Chinese majority state-owned bank and headquartered in Beijing. And we are the fourth largest bank in the world. And the London branch dates back to 1929, supporting its regional and international customers to facilitate trade and cultural exchange between Britain and China. We also offer marketing solutions and tailored corporate financial services and products as well. And for myself, I'm currently the head of acquiring business. The business I launched and developed from scratch in 2012. And we offer Chinese payment solutions, including UnionPay, Alipay, and WeChat Pay, together with marketing solutions to the local UK merchants. And we enabling Chinese customers to pay in RMB directly, while the payment can be settled in the British pound to the merchant's UK bank account. And thus we provide access to digital payment gateways by collaborating with well-known fintech companies as well. Acquiring business is also an important platform and gateway. We endeavor to demonstrate and communicate BOC's core values to our UK merchants and partners through participation and initiation of corporate activities and events where we promote our products and values, thus continue to contribute to BOC's legacy in the UK. That's basically us and myself and our business. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Wenwen. And that's a great insight into the organization as well. And that working cross-culturally is a fantastic skill that many of our students also want to embrace as part of their ongoing career. Thank you. Iris, can I now ask you to introduce yourself and your organization, please?
Hi, everybody. I'm Iris from China Mobile. Actually, I'm the HR manager of China Mobile. I work here since 2015. Actually, I'm representing the UK office because China Mobile is an international company. It's under the China Mobile Group in China, and they opened up an international company in Hong Kong over 10 years ago now. And our UK office is opened in 2014. It's less than 10 years. Today, because our audience are most from university graduates, so mainly I'm going to introduce our graduate trainee program, because every year we do introduce a graduate trainee programs in all our overseas offices. Actually, we have over more than 20 countries have our offices, and the graduate trainee program absorbs graduate trainee in every country. But you can apply for any country you like, but you got to have your rights to work in that country. Like if you apply in UK, you got to have your rights at work in the UK or Italy, or even we have office in Germany, in France. So if you just go online to apply for which country you prefer, then we will follow up the application. To introduce a bit of China Mobile, I think many of you might confuse China Mobile International. Of course, they are dealing with mobile business, but actually, mobile business is only a very small part in our company. We mainly deal with other networking, subsea, IT. They are the most big business from us. And naturally, we have an enterprise team and carrier teams. Carrier means we are dealing with BT, TalkTalk, big telecom company. And enterprise is all the individual enterprise company. If whoever the business want to connect with China, then we are the one here to do it. So from now, maybe you can already think about we are more technical background. You're right. We are very welcome for any student from a technical degree, or they have a path, a pension on IT or technical side, because if you have a little bit of this sort of knowledge, it will help you to develop in our country, in our company. If you have telecom, IT, security, cyber, that sort of degree, it will really help for you to join our technical team. Of course, we have other like sales team, sales support, or general support team, which doesn't need to be that sort of degrees, but if you have some knowledge on it, it will really help. For the program, it's a one-year program, one-year graduate trainee program. We will train you for 1 year. But the country you apply, if we accept you to work in our UK office, then you will study 1 year, learn things over the year. But we have a 3 months job rotation in our headquarters in Hong Kong. Like normally, you guys will join in August, and by November, actually now, this year's graduation year has just, I think yesterday, they gone back to Hong Kong, our headquarters, for 3 months job rotation. Job rotation means you will work in our headquarters in Hong Kong within different departments to learn how headquarters support us as overseas office. And after three months, then you come back to UK or whichever country you're originally from and carry on to finish your program. And then once after 1 year, then you will be confirmed to work in a department with a proper title. You might ask, well, what's the difference on joining this program or joining as an intern or joining as permanent staff? Actually, this graduate trainee program is a permanent contract. We will sign a permanent contract with you. The difference is this is a fast track program. You will have concentrated 1 year training within this year to train you up into the position or role we want to train you into, and then you can jump into the next step quicker than a normal path. because by end of the graduation emo program, maybe if you are presenting well, work well, you might able to jump one grade already to the next 2 grades to become a proper worker. And after this today, I will send the PPT and the video to the host, and they will put it on the marketing materials. You can have a look on what is this graduation trainee program about. But how to apply it is through the link, the website link, probably in March next year will be the deadline. Then you apply it online. Then I will select some suitable candidate for a test. There will be 2 tests, one written test and one verbal and one non-verbal test. Once you pass the test, then I will select those candidates from the past list to be interviewed, and after the interview, you will get a job offer roughly around June next year, and then you will start in August next year, something like that. Yeah. So if you have any other questions about this program or about joining China Mobile in UK or in any other countries, feel free to ask me afterward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Iris. It's a great insight into another international organization and the various different stages within the recruitment process, which I know vary from company to company regarding how many stages will be in that recruitment process. But it's great to kind of get that insight, and I'm sure we'll have some questions about various different stages within that recruitment process. And finally, can I ask Yun, can you introduce yourself and your organization, please?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Yue Liu, and I'm from GK Europe, and I'm working in the marketing department. So GK Europe is we are based in Manchester, and also we have an office in Birmingham. So our company was founded in 2016. So I think maybe some Chinese international students heard about us, because at the moment our customers is the wider British Chinese community in the UK. So we specialized in offering the service of delivering parcel from the UK to China. Especially in the summer when students graduated, we can have them to deliver their luggage from the UK to China. At the moment, because our business developed very quickly, and our services start to cover more places and areas, including the UK, China, and Europe extra. Actually, we are hiring some interns from the British universities. So especially because our customers is the Chinese community in the UK. So we hope some Chinese international students can join us. And also some students working in the marketing department, and they did a good job. So besides that, I'd like to introduce something about our company's culture. So we think the employees are an important asset of our corporate, and also we provide employees with opportunities to achieve. So our culture and workplace are built on the respect, recognition, and equal opportunities. So for everyone, they would be working alongside the aspiring individuals who have a can-do spirit. So with this corporate culture, so we can succeed in building the strong brand awareness and the reputation among the wider British Chinese community and Chinese international students. So at the moment, we are always looking for some talented people to join us and work together. So if anyone is interested in our business or the job, so please feel free to contact us. So thank you.
Thank you for that. And again, you know, the variety of organizations that are being represented here today gives a fantastic insight across various sectors in recruitment processes and what's required. We have got a few questions that have come in from the audience, and if you are happy to answer the question, I'm not going to pick on anybody, but if you're happy to answer the question, just unmute yourself and let me know that you're happy to answer the question. So the first one, I think, is you know, I think is a worry for a lot of students. So those students who aren't on track for a 2-1 or a first, how is getting potentially 2-2 going to affect? What top tips would you give a 2-2 graduate to enhance their employability? Would anybody like to take that one?
Yeah, I could maybe add a few comments to that. So a 2-2 doesn't prevent you applying. It just probably hinders the prospect of you being top of the pile when candidates are being considered. I mean, at the end of the day, the class of the degree is just an indication of how successful you're likely to be when you enter accountancy, because you've got about 2.5 years of solid studying. So it's an indication. So if there's reasons why it may have been a 2-2 rather than a better degree, it's probably worth possibly in a covering email or letter explaining any extenuating circumstances. Even if there are no extenuating circumstances, if you've got a particular interest, a strong interest, which puts you above other candidates, it's worth emphasizing that, because ultimately we are looking for a good balance of someone who really has this, and I don't really like to use the word, but a passion for the career. It could possibly override their slight lack of quality of the degree. So it won't prevent you applying. It will put you slightly behind others, but there's other ways that you can maybe improve your prospects. So don't let it put you off, but you know, make sure you compensate it by explaining why and how you can get around it.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to answer that question?
Can I just add on to what Engin said, similar along similar lines, but from a Bloomberg perspective, it's not necessarily a strict requirement. So when you do submit your application, we ask for a CV and then for you to complete the short Q&A, which is more specific around why you want to pursue a career at Bloomberg and why you're interested in this role and your relevant skills and experiences. So we're aware that some individuals may study a degree and then it's not directly related to what they then apply for later down the lines, and that's absolutely fine. So just explain that through your kind of full timeline of your CV in terms of what you've been doing to develop skills and interests, as well as your university degree if it's relevant. And then in the Q&A section as well, you have an opportunity to describe a little bit more about kind of where you've got to, how you've got to where you are now in terms of your interest in wanting to pursue an application with us.
Thank you both. It's great insights, and I think because I myself am a 2-2 graduate, and although academically I wasn't a first standard, I had other skills and other values and strengths that I used in order to progress my career. So it's engage with your career service and they will help you to navigate this. This is specifically for Gerald Edelman, but I do think this applies to many organizations because it does differ slightly in the UK than to other countries. But do you consider undergraduates and master's students for your graduate level programs, or do you specifically hire one or the other? I'll start with Engin, if that's, you just muted there, Engin.
Okay, we definitely consider postgraduates. We've taken in the past a number of master's graduates. So we don't have a policy of one or the other. We're happy to consider either. I mean, in fact, we also consider school leavers. They'll be on different paths, school leavers and graduates, but a graduate and a postgraduate will be on the same path. So they will both be doing a 3-year ACA qualification.
Thank you. Who would like to go next? Sophie?
Yeah, from our perspective, it's fine if you've done a master's. If you haven't done the master's, again, that's absolutely fine. Everyone will have different routes in. So again, just make sure it's nice and clear in your CV and tell us more information in the Q&A. But yeah, absolutely fine.
Thank you. Iris, for China Mobile, is it a master's more advantageous, or are undergraduates and postgraduates final years treated the same?
To be honest, it doesn't make a big difference, but tends to be nowadays kids most of them has a master's degree, to be honest. And because we receive hundreds of CVs every year, you have to think about how we choose you to be going into the test and something like that. So I can tell, like what I just been said, if you have a technical background, it will help you develop in this country. So we will sort out by the subjects. So if the subjects you study tends to be more likely you can develop in our company, we won't look at it's a master or a first degree.
Thank you.
Yeah, but although, as I said, not necessarily only technical degree we are considering, because we got general of supporting department as well. We do consider other degrees.
Brilliant.
Yeah, thank you.
Wen, can I ask you what is the Bank of China's stance on this? Do they prefer a master's, or is it equal for undergraduate and postgraduate?
Yeah, we're also similar to others as well. We don't have a preference on this. I think because we have around 600 staffs in this country, so we do require different type of staffs and the variety of the subject. So yeah, we don't have the restriction on this.
Thank you. And finally, Union, what would TTK Europe stance on this be? Oh, you're muted. There you go.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe I think you know, we don't have like a special preference for the like degree. I think in the undergraduate or master is okay. But as far as I know, most of my colleagues get the master degrees in the UK. So yeah, but I think the undergraduate is okay. Yeah.
Thank you. And I know we're getting a lot of questions around sponsorship and visas, and I'm not going to go into that today because I know you're not all, apart from Russell being a solicitor, but not all immigration specialists. So the company policy in terms of sponsorship can be found on your company website, I'm assuming, for all of you. So in terms of who you're targeting, and I know Iris mentioned the right to work earlier. So the recruitment policies can be found on the company websites. If you do sponsor international students and want to say anything, do let me know. But we encourage students to check the Bank of China, China Mobile, Bloomberg, and TTK and Gerald Edelman websites. Would anyone like to add to that? Okay, so moving on, there was one question which I thought was an interesting one, and I know that this varies for each individual, but what to you in an application is the most important part of a CV? Which area of an applicant's CV should they prioritize above anything else? And if you want to unmute and just let me know who wants to take that first.
I would say academics first and foremost, but just very briefly going back to the first question we had about whether a 2-2 precludes someone from applying, it does make it harder for you to get your foot in the door. But certainly from Glazier's ETL's perspective, we're looking for well-rounded candidates. All CVs, or the vast majority, have individuals who've got 2-1s from considered to be the better universities in the land. We're looking for people who've got a bit more than that. So to go back to the last question, first and foremost, it is academics, but then we're looking for experience. So we tend to find that graduate applicants have been very well trained in answering our questions when we ask the usual questions of, you know, what makes a good lawyer? Why do you want a career in the law? We hear quite a lot of the same responses. We're looking for people who've actually done it, who've done vacation placements, and we tend to ask them what type of experience they've obtained and why they like that. So if you have got work experience through vacation schemes, then I would definitely get that information down. And then again, we are looking at whether people fit in to the firm. We don't just want people who are, you know, have fantastic academics. We want to see that people have a bit more about themselves. Now that tends to get tested a bit more during the interview process, the assessment process. But if there's something unusual about yourself, then I would suggest you put it down on your CV. Just very briefly, when I was at law school, we had an insolvency practitioner present to us, and he offered someone a job on the basis that for their hobby, they kept ferrets, and he'd never met anybody in his life who kept ferrets, and that information stuck in his mind. And when he came back to go through all the various CVs, believe it or not, that was a factor they took into account, because it was just something different about that person who otherwise on paper looked very similar to all the other candidates. So if you do have any unusual, different outside interests, then I would personally suggest you get them down on your CV and make us aware of them.
Thanks, Russell. And it's true. I mean, you know, increasingly we're seeing more and more employers moving away from that 2-1 or first requirement and moving into the realm of a more rounded applicant. So those that have done well academically is great, but equally having those additional experiences can help to differentiate you from other candidates. And you learn the other skills through the part-time jobs, the clubs, the societies. Engin, do you have anything that you'd like to add to this?
Yeah, so I'd repeat what Russell said earlier. I mean, I don't think there's one aspect of a CV. I think it is the overview of the CV, but it does include academics. I mean, effectively, the candidate is going to spend another 2 or 3 years studying. So we want to make sure that whoever we take on are more likely than not going to be successful for both their sake and ours. So academics is important for that reason. And like I said earlier, it's just an indication, okay? If someone's done well at a degree, they're likely to do well at chartered accountancy. Now, the CV for a graduate, we look at it in a different perspective to say a qualified person. So if we take on a qualified person, someone that's gone through the ranks, we place far more emphasis on what they've done. So they could well have, say, a 3rd-class degree. They managed to get a role and they've really succeeded in their career. They're doing the sort of work that demonstrates they're good at what they're doing. Their career, their degree, their A levels is not irrelevant, but it's less important. But with someone that's a graduate, they've not had the opportunity to show the sort of skills that we would look for otherwise. So as I said earlier in one of my slides, just to demonstrate that you actually do understand what you're letting yourself in for. You know, it is hard work, it is challenging, very rewarding, but it takes the effort to become successful. So however you are able to put it across, and as Russell said earlier, for those people that have made the effort to try and obtain even a brief work experience at a firm of accountants, even if it's 1 or 2 weeks, it just demonstrates that you've thought about it before. It's not like a 3rd semester or 2nd semester, 3rd year thought. You know, someone that's done it as a summer job or what have you, it demonstrates that they've had an interest, okay? They can talk about it, they can say, well, this is the thing that I enjoy doing, or, you know, I wasn't quite keen on such and such, but it shows that they've thought about what their future career might be like, and they've sort of dipped their toe into it. And again, as Russell said, you know, just a little bit of an insight into what they are like, because all firms like to make sure that whoever they take on will fit in the team, okay? I'm sure all of us, we all work in teams. No one works in isolation, and no matter how intelligent and how academically able someone is, if they find it difficult to work with someone else, that's going to be a problem, okay? So just to demonstrate that you have those sort of soft skills, and even if you've done a summer job, I don't know, in Tesco's, which might be irrelevant directly to any of our careers, it demonstrates that you are able to work with others, take responsibility for whatever, you know, that sort of information is useful for us to know.
Thank you. That's really useful. And I would also say as well is engage with your career service before you submit applications. Do have somebody check your CV and your application before submitting, just to make sure that you have a second pair of eyes on it, because sometimes we don't see our own mistakes on the documents. It can be very easy to miss. So do ensure that you have your CV checked by your career service. I'm going to move on to the next question, which I think is a really good question. And I think because it again differs from organization to organization, but it's the assessment center. So you will get advice from some individuals that you need to be collegiate, you need to work well as a group, but then you will, for other industries, be able to demonstrate leadership qualities. So I think for a lot of students, the confusion is what is the balance in terms of top tips for assessment centers and their behavior? What are you looking for in terms of attributes that they're exhibiting at these assessment centers? Who would like to go first?
I can take this one to start with.
Thank you, Sophie.
So we do hold assessment days. However, it's not necessarily confirmed for all roles specifically that we will have an assessment day. So depending which route you apply into, the application process is very slightly different. So just something to note, that it's not necessarily for every recruitment process that there will be an assessment day, but if you do come through and that is part of our recruitment process for that role, I would say one of our key values at Bloomberg is collaboration. So whilst we want to see an interest in terms of desire to get the task done, also listening skills are really, really key, and collaborating with your team. You'll never have met these people before. Well, it's very unlikely that you'll have met the people that you're working with in the assessment day before. So we want to make sure that you can adapt well to kind of different scenarios and new information that comes in. Like I said, collaboration and teamwork is one of our core values. So just keeping that in mind throughout the whole day, whether it's the group exercise that we run or an assessment or as part of an interview as well. So having examples to support collaboration is another key point to note. One step for all of our recruitment processes is a pre-recorded video interview. That's one of the more initial stages before an assessment day if you were to come in for that. So that would be kind of similar to the scenario now where you'd be recording a response to a question on a webcam, whether it's at home or at university or in a nice quiet place in the library, for example. So for everything, we're looking for motivation, specifically for why you've applied for the role, why Bloomberg, why this industry, and make sure you do your research beforehand as much as possible. So attending events like this to get more of an insight, speaking to individuals who work there through in-person events or other virtual events or other employers in the same industry will all be useful stuff. So just note that our recruitment process may be slightly different to other employers in terms of interviews, assessments, assessment days, group exercises, but something that's really key for us is collaboration and motivation.
Thank you for that, Sophie. Would anyone else like to contribute to this?
Well, just say.
Oh, Iris, sorry, Iris, you go first, Iris.
Sorry. Well, just want to support what has been told, just like Angus mentioned about companies tends to find the right candidate to join the company. It has to be cooperate. No matter how good you are, if we feel that you can't work well in our company culture, work well with our colleagues, then no matter how good you are, we won't like to make an offer. And also talking about research the company is very good point. During interview or the assessment date, candidates do have to research about the company. When we interview or doing the assessment, ask you about the company, you know nothing about it, is not impressive at all. Assessment is the time you show off yourself, make yourself outstanding. You think about what the recruiter, what the company looking for, then it's the time for you to show. Yeah, well, it's my own opinion only.
Oh, that's fantastic, Iris. Those are some great tips. Thank you so much. Engin.
Yeah, I mean, all the comments made earlier apply to us as well. But what I would say is, if someone is a bit more reserved, a little bit more introvert, I would say to them, don't worry, because at the end of the day, we do take into account that, you know, it's a little bit daunting for some people. Okay, we don't expect, and we definitely don't want everyone to be seen to be a born leader. Okay, you know, because, you know, if someone is a born leader, then hopefully it come across in a positive way rather than, you know, it could come across quite negative. There's other more subtle things that might come through where someone may not appear to be taking much of a role in the discussion, but if it's clear that they're trying to bring someone else into the discussion, into the conversation, that's quite a positive thing. So we do look at these subtle sort of signs as well. And we try and weigh up, you know, as people have said, how we think they will fit in. Because at the end of the day, if someone is aggressive leader, you know, an out and out red sort of a type character, they may well be a fantastic entrepreneur, you know, a Richard Branson or what have you. They may not fit in with our firm. So don't try to be someone you're not because you think that's what we are looking for. Just be yourself. And as I say, you know, if you feel slightly out of your depth or you're you know, nervous or anxious or what have you, just try and calm down. You know, it takes it lasts a few hours, and we will see beyond that, and hopefully we'll see the sort of signs where you even make a couple of contributions and we think, you know what, that's really good what you just said, or how you consider that issue.
Thank you. And I think one of the best things I was told early in my career is people hire people they like. So try and get your personality across, because you spend more working hours with your colleagues than you do your own family. So, you know, they want to work with people who are of you know, good fit, who they can relate to, who they can have great conversations with as well and work well with. When do you have any insights on or any top tips around assessment centers for students who might be interested in the Bank of China?
Honestly, as I mentioned earlier, we got like hundreds of staff here. Actually, we got like more than 28 nationalities in the bank head office here in London. And we do have a very different types of cultures in the bank, and you sometimes need to work with the local Chinese, sometimes you need to work with the Chinese who transferred from head office or mainland China, different branches, and they only stay here for a couple of years and then they will transfer back. And sometimes you need to work with a local people with different countries and within the team or other teams. So I really agree what you mentioned earlier, that you spend more time with your colleagues than your family members sometimes. So it's very important for you to enjoy your time in the office, and you need to feel comfortable that with your colleagues, because you need to together solve the problem. Yes. So
it's true, isn't it? It's I mean,
yeah.
A lot of our students are studying in very multicultural campuses and cohorts and courses, and using those skills and seeing the skills that you're gaining through the program even is useful, you know, because within cultures there's the subcultures as well.
Yeah, and we even have the trainings internally to let our staff get used to our cultures. something like that. Just want you to be comfortable to work with us. Yeah.
Thank
So I
you.
think those trainings is also very helpful.
Yes, definitely. I think it gives those insights and those skills and develops those communication and team working skills as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yun, is there anything you would like to add in terms of working with TTK Europe and your assessment centres?
Yeah, I shared some ideas, because for example, when we publish the job ads, we can receive a lot of the CVs. So when I checked those CVs, I found out actually a lot of the candidates have the similar experience. Like for example, if you are a student, so most of them just have like the similar degree or master degrees, have some knowledge about some subjects. But I think if you want to stand out from job description very, very carefully, because we just we cannot spend a lot of time to find out some like a work appearance related to our job description. So need to read the job description very, very carefully, and make sure your study or internship is related with our requirements. Then you will be sent out from all of the candidates. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. We're coming towards the end of today's session, so I'm going to go round the panel and just get your final top tip or insight that you would like to share with the audience today. And I'm going to go as per the slide, so everyone prepared and knows which order I'm going to do this in. But firstly, it's just to say thank you for all the great insights and tips, and particularly around, you know, understanding how to work cross-culturally, understanding the various different recruitment processes and how to stand out with regards to your CV, and that getting a 2-2 is not the end of the world. There is life after a 2-2, and how to manage that effectively. So I appreciate that. So first of all, I'm going to go to Engin and say, what would be your final thoughts for today?
Okay, well, hopefully people have got some good tips from a lot of the useful advice that everyone's given. I mean, the thing that I would emphasize most is make sure that it comes across that you know who you're applying to, you know what the career involves, and you're aware of how they may differ from a similar organization in the same sector. Because one question that we ask regularly is, how do we differ from a smaller and a larger firm? Okay, because if they know the difference, they know, or it's clear that they've done their research, and it's important to us. It's important to us to know that someone has taken the time and effort to look into their chosen career, which will hopefully last them many, many years, if not the rest of their career. So it is important to know that someone has made that effort.
Thank you. Russell?
I would say be prepared for any interviews. Know your prospective employer, so do your homework. Be calm. We're all human at the end of the day. We all have different skills and attributes. You're not going to tick every box. So be yourself. And as I think as Engin said before, don't try to be someone who you're not. We are looking for a wide range of skills. It's rare that somebody ticks every single box and is great at them all. And if you try to focus on those points, you'll be fine.
Thank you. Sophie?
I would say make sure you do your research. Research is key because it will make you understand if we might be the right fit for you or a different employer. Like I said, motivation is a really key part of our recruitment process. So we want to understand why you've applied for a specific role and why this area interests you. I would also say, as well as us assessing you, you're kind of assessing us as an employer when you come into the office, or whether you're part of the recruitment process in another form. So make sure you've got questions to ask your interviewers or to ask the recruitment team, and try and kind of get as much information as you can about the employer that you're applying to, because you might go through in a recruitment process for a specific role or do your research into a specific industry and then realize that maybe that's not for you, and that's also valuable. So make sure you're not afraid to get as much information as possible and ask questions. On that same note, I'm going to do a little plug. I know you're going to send out information afterwards, but we're running an event in Manchester in a couple of weeks. And as part of the information pack that you'll be sent out afterwards, after this event, there is a link to apply. I'll put it in the chat as well. But attending events like that from employers and speaking directly to people within teams that you might be applying to is so valuable. So if you're interested, please do come along and go along to similar events from other employers as well. It's really valuable.
Thank you. I know there was a couple of questions around company culture, and I think that what you've just said there in terms of events is a great way to get that insight into the company culture, because you have representatives there that you can ask, what is it like, you know, to work in the organization, not just what the day-to-day job is, but also, do you have game board Friday? You know, is this something that you do? Are there social elements to work as well? Because we want to work somewhere we enjoy, and what matters to you might be emulated in that organization. So it's worth attending these events. Thank you. When?
I would say, like, because I also started in this country, I've been through all this as well. So I would just, my own opinion, I would like to suggest, think carefully and think what you want exactly, because I know you're still very young and you have a lot of time, but maybe the first job could be a huge impact on your career. Maybe you're gonna start it. Maybe you're gonna work with that first company for like 5 to 10 years, like me. I've been working for Bank of China for like 13 years already. And when I started, I didn't know I'm gonna work in that area. And there's no such subject like could tell you how to work with the payment industry as well. So I do hope you think carefully what you want in the future before you just make a decision and jump into a job. Like, especially if it is your first job, is quite important and gonna influence you like for the future a lot as well.
Thank you so much for that. Iris.
Yes, hi. Again and again, research to prepare yourself. Why it's important for research? I know, well, all the candidates, they are very busy. They have to make sure they finish the degree, and they have to apply over 100 jobs. But unfortunately, before you come for interview, just like other people said, do your research and understand what the company is doing. Well, we don't expect you completely know what's our business about, but at least you got some ideas, and let us know, impress ourselves, how eager you want to join us, and why you want to join us. Although you might not know what you're going to do yet after you finish the degree, the work you're going to work might not be related to your degree, but you have to show us what is your thinking. At least you got some idea. Well, you have to make yourself outstanding to us. Otherwise, don't waste your time. Don't waste our time. I'm sorry to say. Okay, thank you.
No, that's a fantastic point. You know, it's quality over quantity, I think, isn't it? It's if you spend that time to do the research, you're less likely to waste people's time. If you just send off 100 applications, but you don't know who you're applying to, you're wasting that recruiter's time and potentially your own time, because it might not be a good fit for you. So
exactly, we go through hundreds of series. Always. Last night I go through over 150 series. So you have to show how to impress me to pick you up. Like GT program, every year we receive over 500-600 series. And how can I pick you up from those series? You have to think about what the recruiter is looking for.
Yes.
Yeah,
and I say this all the time, our recruiters are experienced. They can spot a generic CV in 5 seconds. If you tailor your CV to that job description, you're more likely to catch the recruiter's eye.
Yeah, tailor it. Don't use the same CV for every job application.
It's like what Russell said, put something unusual on there, capture the eye of the recruiter. I think it's really important. Yeah. Thank you for that, Iris.
Thank you.
And finally, Union, what is your final thoughts for today?
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to share my own experience because I also studied in the UK. I graduated from University of Leeds in 2020. So at the moment, I've been working in the UK for almost 2 years. But before I came to the UK, I worked in China for several years. Actually, I went through some career transition. So I would say maybe when I graduated in the UK, I feel very difficult to find a job in the new country. So I think many international students have the similar experience. But I would say you need just believe yourself and do a lot of the research about the company, and you maybe before applying for the jobs, you need to ask yourself what you really like, what's your interest, what's your benefits, and just try it. So yeah, maybe at the last you would find the proper job in the UK. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And my final thought for the day, as well as research, is also network. So really make the most of your very diverse network, whether it be keeping in contact with colleagues from back home, from your undergraduate program back home or wherever you studied, but making use of that network, because who you know going forward in your career is going to be as important as what you know, I think. And it's definitely worth as well just to even to have a support network of peers who are going through similar things to yourself, who can share advice, but also in the future, maybe in a role that could potentially open doors for you. So it's always worth keeping your network. So I want to thank my panel and key speakers today. Thank you so much. It's been a fantastic event and some really great insights, I think, shared today. The event has been recorded and we will share the link with the marketing pack to those who've registered for the event today. And I would like to ask my panelists to stay on the line and thank all my audience members for your participation and all your questions today. They were absolutely fantastic. I hope you gained some really good insights, and some of you I already saw were networking, so well done. And I look forward to our next session, which is tomorrow at 11 o'clock. That session will be facilitated by my colleague Lin Lin. That session will also be in Mandarin for those of you who speak Chinese. It's going to be a fantastic event about the recruitment processes back in China. So for those of you looking to return to China after your studies, we have some fantastic panelists and it will give some really, really good insights into your career and career prospects. So thank you again for attending today, and I will end the session there if the panelists can remain on the line. And thank you, audience. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye.